In a small, bustling diner tucked away in the heart of a busy city, life moved at its own chaotic pace. The clinking of plates, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the hum of conversations filled the air. Among the whirlwind of activity was Sarah, a young waitress whose bright smile never faltered despite her exhausting routine. Sarah wasn't just working to pay the bills. She was fighting for a better future, for herself and her younger brother, Ethan. Ethan was a talented artist with dreams bigger than their tiny apartment could hold. But dreams came with costs, art supplies, tuition fees, and countless other expenses that weighed heavily on Sarah's shoulders. To make ends meet, she worked long hours at the diner during the day and cleaned offices late into the night. It was a grueling schedule, but Sarah refused to complain. She found joy in the little things, in the laughter of customers, the satisfaction of a job well done, and the hope that tomorrow might bring something brighter. One chilly afternoon, as Sarah wiped down tables after the lunch rush, the doorbell chimed, signaling the arrival of a new customer. She glanced up briefly and saw a man walking in. He looked out of place in the modest diner, dressed in an expensive suit that screamed sophistication. His sharp features and confident stride suggested he belonged in a high-end restaurant or a corporate boardroom. Not here, where mismatched chairs scraped against tiled floors and ketchup bottles sat half-empty on every table. But there was something unusual about him. Instead of speaking, he gestured toward the counter and pulled out his phone, typing quickly. When he turned the screen toward her, it read, "Can I see the menu?" Sarah blinked in surprise before nodding politely. That's when she realized he was deaf. Most servers would have hesitated or fumbled awkwardly, unsure how to communicate, but Sarah didn't miss a beat. She grabbed her notepad and pen from her apron pocket and wrote back, "Of course. Let me know if you need help choosing." Her calm demeanor put the man at ease, and soon they were exchanging notes back and forth, discussing menu options and sharing light-hearted comments about the food. The man introduced himself as Daniel through his phone. Despite their unconventional method of communication, Sarah made sure he felt welcomed. She patiently explained each dish, recommended her favorites, and even joked about the cook's infamous mystery soup, which sometimes tasted like chicken and other times like, well, no one really knew. Daniel chuckled silently, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he typed, "I'll take my chances." By the time Daniel finished his meal, he seemed genuinely pleased, not just with the food, but with the experience. Before leaving, he handed Sarah a generous tip. She tried to protest, insisting she didn't need extra, but Daniel shook his head firmly and tapped his chest twice, a gesture she later learned meant gratitude. As he walked out the door, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye. Little did she know that brief encounter would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. For now, though, Sarah returned to her duties, unaware that fate had already begun weaving its intricate design. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a regular at the diner. Every visit followed the same rhythm. He'd walk in, exchange notes with Sarah, enjoy his meal, and leave with a polite nod. Their interactions grew warmer with each meeting, and Sarah found herself looking forward to his visits. Unlike many customers who treated waitstaff as invisible, Daniel showed genuine interest in her life. Through their written exchanges, she learned bits and pieces about him, that he loved classical music, traveled often for work, and had a soft spot for desserts. What Sarah didn't realize was that Daniel wasn't just any ordinary customer. In fact, he was one of the wealthiest men in the country, a self-made billionaire who had built his fortune through technology and innovation. Yet wealth hadn't spoiled him. If anything, it had made him wary of people's intentions. Over the years, he had grown tired of superficial relationships and insincere flattery. Most people wanted something from him, his money, his influence, or his connections. True kindness, like what Sarah showed him, was rare. Daniel admired Sarah's sincerity. She didn't treat him differently because of his disability or his apparent wealth. Instead, she saw him as a person deserving of respect and care. This simple act of humanity touched him deeply. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a billionaire or a deaf man, but as Daniel. One rainy afternoon, as Sarah served Daniel his usual order of coffee and pie, he decided to test her character further. From his wallet, he pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Confused, Sarah picked it up and opened it cautiously. Inside was a check made out to her name for $10,000. Her jaw dropped, and she stared at Daniel in disbelief. Quickly, grabbing her notepad, she scribbled, "What is this? I can't accept this." Daniel responded by typing on his phone, "For being kind when no one else cared." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she tried to hand the check back, but Daniel refused to take it. He held up his hands in a firm yet gentle gesture, indicating that the decision was final. That night, Sarah sat alone in her cramped apartment, staring at the check. Her mind raced with questions. Why had Daniel done this? What did he expect in return? And most importantly, should she keep it? Part of her felt guilty accepting such a large sum, while another part whispered that this could be the answer to her prayers. With the money, she could finally breathe easier, pay off debts, support Ethan's education, and maybe even take a much-needed break. After hours of tossing and turning, Sarah reached a decision. She would use the money wisely, not to indulge herself, but to create opportunities for her family and others around her. At the same time, she vowed to find a way to repay Daniel's generosity, not with money but with actions that matched his kindness. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Daniel watched her transformation with quiet pride. He noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, how she carried herself with newfound confidence, how she interacted with customers with even greater warmth, and how she started learning sign language to communicate better with him. These efforts spoke volumes about her character, reinforcing his belief that he had chosen wisely. And so, their unlikely friendship continued, laying the groundwork for a story that would unfold in ways neither of them could have imagined. As the weeks passed, Sarah's life began to shift in ways she hadn't anticipated. The $10,000 check from Daniel had opened doors she thought were permanently closed. She paid off her mounting debts, enrolled Ethan in a prestigious art program, and even managed to cut back on her second job. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe again. But despite these changes, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she owed Daniel more than just gratitude. His generosity weighed heavily on her conscience, not because it was unwelcome, but because it came with such purity of intent. Daniel, meanwhile, continued visiting the diner regularly. Each time he walked through the door, Sarah greeted him with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Their conversations, scribbled notes exchanged over coffee cups, had grown deeper. They talked about their dreams, fears, and the little things that made life meaningful. Sarah learned that Daniel had built his empire from scratch, starting as a young programmer with nothing but a laptop and an idea. He spoke fondly of his early struggles, emphasizing how kindness from strangers had kept him going during tough times. "That's why I notice it now," he once typed on his phone. "Kindness is rare, but when you find it, it changes everything." These words resonated deeply with Sarah. She realized that Daniel wasn't just helping her financially, he was teaching her the value of compassion. Inspired by his example, she decided to pay it forward. One evening, after finishing her shift, at the diner, Sarah stopped by a local community center. She noticed a flyer advertising free sign language classes and signed up immediately. It wasn't easy juggling work, family, and learning something entirely new, but Sarah threw herself into it wholeheartedly. Every gesture she mastered, every word she learned, brought her closer to understanding Daniel's world and to bridging the gap between them. Daniel noticed the effort almost instantly. During one of his visits, Sarah surprised him by signing, "Thank you." Though her movements were hesitant and imperfect, the sentiment behind them was unmistakable. Daniel's face lit up with pride, and he responded with a warm smile before typing on his phone, "You're amazing." Those two simple words meant more to Sarah than any compliment she'd ever received. They validated her hard work and reminded her that growth often starts with small steps. As Sarah's confidence grew, so did her desire to make a difference. She started volunteering at the same community center where she took sign language classes. At first, She helped organize events and distribute flyers, but soon she found herself mentoring kids who struggled in school. Many of them came from broken homes or faced challenges that mirrored her own past. Sarah understood their pain intimately, and she used her experiences to guide them. She told them stories about working multiple jobs, chasing dreams, and finding hope even in the darkest moments. Her authenticity struck a chord with the children, who began opening up to her in ways they never had with anyone else. Word of Sarah's efforts spread quickly, earning her recognition within the community. The staff at the center encouraged her to take on bigger responsibilities, suggesting she lead workshops or spearhead fundraising initiatives. Though flattered, Sarah hesitated. She still saw herself as just a waitress, a nobody trying to get by. But Daniel saw something different. During one of their conversations, he wrote, "Why don't you think bigger? You have so much to offer." Sarah laughed nervously and replied on her notepad, "I'm not cut out for big things. I'm just me." Daniel shook his head firmly and typed back, "Sometimes being just you is enough. People connect with honesty, not titles." His words lingered in Sarah's mind long after their conversation ended. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she thought about all the lives she had touched. Her brother, the kids at the community center, even Daniel himself. Maybe he was right. Maybe she didn't need fancy credentials or a grand title to make an impact. All she needed was the willingness to try. One day, as Sarah served Daniel his usual coffee, he handed her another envelope. Her heart skipped, a beat fearing it contained another check. But when she opened it, she found something entirely unexpected, an invitation. Inside was a formal letter asking her to join Daniel's foundation as a program coordinator. The foundation focused on supporting underprivileged communities, providing resources for education, healthcare, and empowerment. According to the letter, Daniel believed Sarah's background and compassion made her uniquely qualified for the role. Stunned, Sarah stared at the invitation, unsure what to say. "Me?" She finally scribbled on her notepad. "But I don't have experience running programs like this." Daniel smiled knowingly and typed on his phone, "Experience can be learned. What matters is your heart, and yours is golden." Though touched by his faith in her, Sarah felt overwhelmed. Joining a billionaire's foundation sounded like stepping into another world, a world far removed from the diner where she spent most of her days. Could she really handle such responsibility? What if she failed? For days, Sarah wrestled with doubt. She discussed the opportunity with Ethan, who enthusiastically urged her to take it. "This is your chance to do something incredible, sis," he said, his eyes shining with admiration. Even the kids at the community center chimed in, telling her how proud they were of her. Slowly but surely, their encouragement chipped away at her fears. Finally, Sarah made her decision. She accepted Daniel's offer, knowing it wouldn't be easy but determined to give it her best shot. On her last day at the diner, she hugged her co-workers goodbye, promising to visit often. As she hung up her apron for the final time, she felt a bittersweet pang of nostalgia. The diner had been her home for so long, but now it was time to step into a new chapter. Sarah's transition into the foundation was both exhilarating and challenging. Under Daniel's guidance, she traveled to different parts of the country, meeting people whose lives had been transformed by the organization's work. She visited schools rebuilt after natural disasters, health clinics offering free services to underserved populations, and training centers equipping adults with skills to secure better jobs. Everywhere she went, she listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. Her ability to connect with people proved invaluable, allowing her to identify needs others might overlook. Daniel watched proudly as Sarah embraced her new role. Gone was the timid waitress who doubted her worth. In her place stood a confident leader capable of inspiring those around her. Together, they tackled projects that seemed impossible at first glance, turning obstacles into opportunities. Their partnership became a testament to what could be achieved when kindness met determination. Back home, Ethan thrived in art school, thanks to the stability Sarah provided. He often teased her about her transformation, saying, "My big sister went from serving burgers to saving the world." Though Sarah laughed at his jokes, she knew there was truth in his words. Everything she had accomplished stemmed from a single act of kindness, a moment when she chose empathy over indifference. By the end of the year, Sarah had become an integral part of the foundation. Her innovative ideas and tireless dedication earned her praise from colleagues and beneficiaries alike. Yet amid all the accolades, she remained humble, always remembering where she came from. She frequently returned to the diner, catching up with old friends and sharing stories of her adventures. To everyone who knew her, Sarah was living proof that kindness has a ripple effect. It starts small, but grows exponentially, touching lives in ways no one could predict. And for Daniel, watching Sarah flourish reinforced his belief in humanity's potential. He had seen countless individuals corrupted by greed and power, but Sarah reminded him that true greatness lies in lifting others up. Their friendship evolved into a bond built on mutual respect and shared purpose, proving that connections forged through kindness are among the strongest. As Sarah prepared for her next project, a nationwide initiative to provide educational resources to rural areas, she reflected on how far she had come. From struggling to survive to spearheading life-changing programs, her journey was nothing short of extraordinary, and while she knew challenges lay ahead, she faced them with courage, knowing she wasn't alone. After all, sometimes the smallest gestures, a note on a napkin, a check slipped across a table, can lead to the greatest transformations. Sarah's first few months at Daniel's Foundation were a whirlwind of new experiences, challenges, and lessons. She quickly realized that stepping into this role wasn't just about managing programs or attending meetings. It was about understanding the human stories behind the statistics. Every project she worked on had faces attached to it, children eager to learn, families striving for stability, and communities yearning for hope. Sarah immersed herself in their lives, determined to make a difference. Her days began early, often before sunrise. After grabbing a quick cup of coffee, she would sit at her desk reviewing reports, planning strategies, and responding to emails. It was a stark contrast to her previous routine of rushing between tables at the diner, but Sarah welcomed the change. The work was demanding, yes, but it filled her with purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was contributing to something larger than herself. One of her earliest assignments took her to a small town devastated by a flood. Homes were destroyed, schools were closed, and families struggled to rebuild their lives. When Sarah arrived, she was greeted by scenes of chaos, mud-covered streets, makeshift tents serving as shelters, and weary faces etched with despair. Yet amidst the devastation, there were glimmers of resilience. Children played with whatever toys they could salvage, and neighbors helped one another carry supplies. Sarah spent weeks in the town, coordinating efforts to distribute food, clean, water, and medical supplies. She worked closely with local leaders to assess needs and prioritize resources. Though exhausted, she found joy in the smallest victories: a mother thanking her for diapers, a teacher expressing gratitude for new textbooks, or a child smiling as they received a warm meal. These moments reminded her why she had accepted Daniel's offer in the first place. During this time, Daniel visited the town to oversee the foundation's progress. Watching Sarah interact with the community, he saw a side of her he hadn't fully appreciated before. She wasn't just compassionate, she was resourceful, adaptable, and fiercely committed. Whether negotiating with suppliers or comforting a distraught parent, she handled every situation with grace and determination. Daniel couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. He had known Sarah was special, but seeing her in action confirmed his belief that she was destined for greatness. As Sarah continued her work, she faced obstacles that tested her resolve. One particularly challenging project involved setting up a vocational training center for adults in an underserved urban neighborhood. Many residents were skeptical, fearing the program was too good to be true. "What's the catch?" one man asked during a community meeting. "No one gives anything for free." Sarah understood their hesitation. Years of hardship had taught these people to guard themselves against false promises, Determined to earn their trust, she spent hours walking through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, and listening to their concerns. She shared her own story, how she had once been in a similar situation, struggling to make ends meet while dreaming of a better future. Her honesty resonated with the community, and slowly, they began opening up to her. The training center eventually became a lifeline for many. Participants learned skills like carpentry, sewing, and computer programming, empowering them to secure stable jobs. One woman, Maria, stood out to Sarah. A single mother of 3, Maria had worked odd jobs for years, barely scraping by. Through the program, she discovered a talent for graphic design and landed a position at a local advertising agency. On her graduation day, Maria hugged Sarah tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me my life back," she whispered. Moments like these fueled Sarah's passion. Each success story reinforced her belief in the power of opportunity. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were setbacks, funding shortages, logistical hurdles, and moments when she questioned whether she was cut out for this kind of work. During those times, Daniel was her rock. He offered guidance without micromanaging, encouragement without pressure. "You're stronger than you think," he often typed on his phone, and somehow, his words always managed to lift her spirits. Back home, Ethan's artistic talents continued to flourish. With Sarah's support, he entered several competitions and won awards that boosted his confidence. His paintings, vibrant and full of emotion, captured the essence of resilience, a theme inspired by Sarah's journey. One evening, as they sat together in their modest apartment, Ethan handed her a canvas wrapped in brown paper. "This is for you," he said with a grin. Curious, Sarah unwrapped it carefully. The painting depicted a waitress standing in a bustling diner, surrounded by glowing threads that stretched outward, connecting her to people from all walks of life. In the background was a city skyline, symbolizing growth and possibility. At the bottom, Ethan had written, "From serving plates to changing lives." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she hugged her brother. "You're amazing, Ethan," she said softly. "Thank you." Ethan shrugged, pretending to be nonchalant, but his smile betrayed his pride. "Just telling your story, sis. You're the real artist here." Sarah's growing confidence didn't go unnoticed by others. Colleagues at the foundation admired her ability to connect with people and solve problems creatively. Volunteers praised her leadership, saying she made everyone feel valued and heard. Even Daniel, who rarely expressed emotions openly, seemed genuinely impressed by her transformation. Their friendship deepened as they collaborated on projects, sharing ideas, and celebrating milestones together. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Daniel invited Sarah to join him for dinner at a quiet cafe. Over steaming cups of tea, they reflected on how far she had come. "Do you ever regret leaving the diner?" Daniel typed on his phone, his expression curious. Sarah thought for a moment before replying, "Not for a second. But I'll always miss it. The people, the energy, the simplicity. It shaped who I am today." She paused, then added, "Does that make sense?" Daniel nodded and smiled. "Perfect sense," he wrote. "Our pasts define us, but they don't have to limit us." Their conversation turned to the future. Daniel revealed plans to expand the foundation's reach globally, focusing on education and healthcare initiatives in developing countries. He wanted Sarah to lead the charge, confident that her empathy and adaptability would inspire teams around the world. The idea excited her, though it also intimidated her. Could she handle such responsibility? What if she failed? Sensing her hesitation, Daniel placed a reassuring hand on hers. "You've already proven yourself," he typed. "Trust in your abilities. And remember, you're not alone." Those words stayed with Sarah long after their dinner ended. As she walked home under a starlit sky, she realized how much she had grown, not just professionally, but personally. She no longer doubted her worth or feared failure. Instead, she embraced challenges as opportunities to learn and grow. By the end of the year, Sarah had become a cornerstone of the foundation. Her innovative approaches and unwavering dedication earned her recognition within the organization and beyond. Local newspapers featured articles about her work, highlighting her journey from waitress to humanitarian leader. Friends and former co-workers marveled at her transformation, calling her an inspiration. But despite the accolades, Sarah remained grounded. She frequently returned to the diner, catching up with old friends and sharing stories of her adventures. To her, the diner represented more than just a job. It was a reminder of where her journey began and the values that guided her forward. For Daniel, watching Sarah thrive reinforced his faith in humanity's potential. In a world often driven by greed and self-interest, Sarah proved that kindness and humility could create lasting change. Their partnership evolved into a bond built on mutual respect and shared purpose, proving that connections forged through authenticity are among the strongest. As Sarah prepared for her next challenge, a global initiative to provide educational resources to remote villages, she reflected on how far she had come. From struggling to survive to spearheading life-changing programs, her journey was nothing short of extraordinary. And while she knew challenges lay ahead, she faced them with courage, knowing she wasn't alone. After all, sometimes the smallest gestures, a note on a napkin, a check slipped across a table, can lead to the greatest transformations. Sarah's journey with Daniel's Foundation reached new heights as she prepared to lead its first global initiative. The project aimed to bring educational resources to remote villages in developing countries, targeting areas where children had little to no access to formal schooling. It was an ambitious goal, one that required meticulous planning, extensive travel, and collaboration with local governments and organizations. For Sarah, it marked another step into uncharted territory, a chance to push herself beyond what she thought possible. The preparation phase was intense. Sarah spent countless hours researching regions in need, studying cultural nuances, and designing programs tailored to each community's unique challenges. She worked closely with a team of experts, including educators, engineers, and logistics specialists, to ensure every detail was accounted for. Despite the pressure, Sarah thrived under the responsibility. Each decision she made felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something meaningful. One of her earliest trips took her to a small village nestled in the mountains of Nepal. Accessible only by foot after a grueling trek through rugged terrain, the village was home to about 200 families who lived off subsistence farming. When Sarah arrived, accompanied by a translator and a small support team, she found the villagers gathered around a makeshift school, a dilapidated hut with crumbling walls and a leaky roof. Inside, a single teacher struggled to teach over 30 students using outdated materials and barely any supplies. Seeing the conditions firsthand broke Sarah's heart, but it also fueled her determination. Over the next few weeks, she worked tirelessly alongside the villagers to renovate the school. With funding from the foundation, they built sturdy classrooms, installed solar panels for electricity, and stocked the library with books donated from across the globe. Local artisans contributed handmade furniture, while volunteers painted murals on the walls depicting scenes of hope and learning. By the time the project was completed, the once dilapidated structure had transformed into a vibrant hub of education. The impact was immediate. Children who had previously shown little interest in school now eagerly attended classes, their eyes lighting up as they explored new subjects. Parents expressed gratitude, saying they finally saw a path forward for their kids. One elderly woman approached Sarah during a community celebration, tears streaming down her weathered face. "You've given our children a future," she said through the translator. "We will never forget this." As word of the Nepal project spread, other communities began reaching out to the foundation for help. Requests poured in from villages in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America, each with its own set of challenges. Sarah knew they couldn't tackle everything at once, so she prioritized based on urgency and feasibility. Her ability to listen and adapt became invaluable as she navigated diverse cultures and environments. In Kenya, for example, Sarah faced a completely different scenario. The region suffered not only from a lack of schools but also from severe water shortages. Recognizing the interconnectedness of these issues, she proposed a dual approach, building schools and installing wells to provide clean drinking water. This holistic strategy resonated with the local population, who enthusiastically participated in the construction efforts. Within months, 2 new schools stood tall beside freshly dug wells, symbolizing a brighter future for the entire community. Each trip brought new lessons and insights. Sarah learned to navigate language barriers, cultural differences, and logistical hurdles with patience and creativity. She discovered the importance of involving locals in every stage of the process, ensuring sustainability long after the foundation's team left. And most importantly, she realized that true progress wasn't measured by numbers or statistics. It was reflected in the smiles of children walking to school for the first time, the relief of parents seeing their kids thrive, and the pride of communities coming together to build a better tomorrow. Despite her successes, Sarah encountered moments of doubt and frustration. There were times when projects stalled due to unforeseen complications, political instability, natural disasters, or funding delays. In one instance, a shipment of textbooks intended for a rural school in Guatemala was delayed for weeks because of customs issues. Frustrated and exhausted, Sarah questioned whether she was making any real difference. Was all her hard work worth it? During these low points, Daniel remained a steady source of encouragement. He reminded her that setbacks were inevitable but temporary. Change takes time, he typed on his phone during one particularly tough week. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. His words always managed to reignite her resolve, reminding her why she had embarked on this journey in the first place. Their partnership continued to evolve, blending professional collaboration with deep friendship. They communicated seamlessly, often finishing each other's sentences despite their reliance on written notes and gestures. Daniel admired Sarah's resilience and vision, while Sarah valued his wisdom and unwavering support. Together, they formed a dynamic duo capable of tackling even the toughest challenges. Back home, Sarah's story inspired those around her. Ethan, now a rising star in the art world, dedicated his latest exhibition to her. Titled Threads of Hope, the collection featured paintings inspired by the people and places Sarah had impacted. One piece depicted a Nepali girl holding a book, her expression radiating curiosity and joy. Another showed Kenyan farmers working together to dig a well, their faces etched with determination. The exhibition drew crowds, raising awareness and funds for the foundation's ongoing projects. Friends and former co-workers marveled at how much Sarah had grown. To them, she was proof that kindness and perseverance could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Even strangers reached out, sharing stories of how her work had touched their lives. A teacher in India wrote to thank her for providing resources that allowed him to keep his struggling school open. A mother in Peru sent photos of her daughter proudly wearing a uniform from the foundation's program. These messages filled Sarah with gratitude, reinforcing her belief in the ripple effect of compassion. As Sarah's reputation grew, so did opportunities for collaboration. Governments, NGOs, and private companies sought partnerships with the foundation, eager to contribute to its mission. Sarah embraced these alliances, knowing that collective effort could amplify their impact. She spearheaded initiatives to train teachers, develop digital learning platforms, and advocate for policy changes that supported marginalized communities. Through it all, Sarah remained humble. She frequently returned to the diner, catching up with old friends and sharing updates about her adventures. To her, the diner represented more than just a job. It was a reminder of where her journey began and the values that guided her forward. No matter how far she traveled or how high she climbed, she stayed connected to her roots. For Daniel, watching Sarah flourish reinforced his faith in humanity's potential. In a world often driven by greed and self-interest, Sarah proved that kindness and humility could create lasting change. Their bond deepened, evolving into a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Though their backgrounds couldn't have been more different, They complemented each other perfectly, Daniel's strategic mind balancing Sarah's empathetic heart. By the end of the year, Sarah had become a beacon of hope for countless individuals and communities. Her leadership inspired others to join the cause, creating a network of changemakers united by a common goal: to make the world a better place. Yet, despite her achievements, Sarah never lost sight of the lesson she had learned early on: that true greatness lies not in titles or accolades, but in the lives you touch along the way. As she boarded yet another flight to a new destination, Sarah reflected on her journey. From serving plates in a bustling diner to spearheading life-changing programs, she had come farther than she ever imagined. But she knew her work was far from over. Challenges lay ahead, yes, but so did opportunities to continue making a difference. After all, sometimes the smallest gestures, a note on a napkin, a check slipped across a table, can lead to the greatest transformations. Sarah's global initiatives with Daniel's Foundation continued to gain momentum, touching lives in ways she had never dreamed possible. Each project brought its own set of challenges and triumphs, but one thing remained constant: her unwavering commitment to creating meaningful change. As the foundation expanded its reach, Sarah found herself not only leading teams but also becoming a symbol of hope for communities around the world. One of the most transformative projects took place in a remote village in Guatemala. The area was plagued by poverty, malnutrition, and limited access to education. Many children worked alongside their parents in the fields instead of attending school, perpetuating a cycle of hardship that spanned generations. When Sarah arrived, accompanied by a team of volunteers and local partners, she was met with skepticism. "Why should we trust outsiders?" one elder asked during a community meeting. "They come, they promise, and then they leave." Determined to earn their trust, Sarah spent days walking through the village, introducing herself to families and listening to their concerns. She shared her story, how she had once been a waitress struggling to make ends meet, and explained her vision for the future. Slowly but surely, the villagers began to open up. They spoke about their dreams for their children, their fears about the future, and their desire for a better life. Sarah listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. Her genuine interest broke down barriers, paving the way for collaboration. With input from the community, Sarah designed a program that addressed both immediate needs and long-term goals. In addition to building a new school, the foundation introduced nutrition workshops, vocational training for adults, and microloans to help families start small businesses. Local women formed cooperatives to sell handmade crafts, while men learned sustainable farming techniques to increase crop yields. Within months, the village buzzed with renewed energy. Children returned to school, parents gained financial stability, and the entire community rallied around a shared sense of purpose. The success of the Guatemala project reinforced Sarah's belief in the power of partnership. She realized that lasting change required more than just resources. It demanded trust, respect, and a willingness to listen. These principles guided her as she embarked on new ventures, each one presenting unique opportunities and obstacles. Bangladesh, Sarah faced one of her toughest challenges yet. The region was prone to devastating floods, which regularly destroyed homes, schools, and crops. Families lived in constant fear, unsure when disaster would strike next. During her initial assessment visit, Sarah witnessed the aftermath of a recent flood firsthand. Entire villages were submerged, leaving survivors stranded on rooftops or crowded into makeshift shelters. The sight was overwhelming, but Sarah refused to let despair take hold. Working closely with engineers and disaster relief experts, Sarah proposed an innovative solution: floating schools. Designed to withstand flooding, these boats doubled as classrooms during normal times and emergency shelters during crises. Equipped with solar panels, books, and teaching materials, the floating schools provided uninterrupted access to education, even in the harshest conditions. For many children, it was the first time they could attend school without interruption. The project garnered international attention, earning praise from humanitarian organizations and government officials alike. But for Sarah, the true measure of success lay in the smiles of students eagerly boarding the boats each morning. "This is our classroom," one boy told her proudly, pointing to the colorful vessel docked near his home. His words stayed with Sarah long after she left, reminding her why she had dedicated her life to this cause. As Sarah traveled from country to country, she became acutely aware of the interconnectedness of global issues. Poverty, lack of education, climate change, they all fed into one another, creating complex webs of hardship. Solving one problem often required addressing others simultaneously. This realization inspired her to adopt a holistic approach, tackling multiple challenges at once. In Nigeria, for example, Sarah launched a program focused on girls' education. Cultural norms and safety concerns prevented many young girls from attending school, leaving them vulnerable to early marriage and exploitation. To address these barriers, the foundation built secure boarding schools, offered scholarships, and organized community workshops to challenge stereotypes. At the same time, they partnered with health organizations to provide reproductive education and services, empowering girls to take control of their futures. The impact was profound. Enrollment rates soared, dropout numbers plummeted, and attitudes began to shift. Mothers who had never stepped foot in a classroom watched proudly as their daughters graduated, ready to pursue careers in medicine, engineering, and law. One girl, Amina, wrote to Sarah after completing her exams, "You showed me I can be anything I want. Thank you for believing in us." Despite her successes, Sarah occasionally struggled with self-doubt. The scale of the problems she faced sometimes felt insurmountable. How could she possibly make a dent in centuries-old cycles of poverty and inequality? On particularly tough days, she turned to Daniel for guidance. Whether through handwritten notes or quiet gestures of support, he reminded her that every effort mattered. "Progress isn't always visible," he typed on his phone during one late-night conversation. "But don't underestimate the power of planting seeds." His words resonated deeply with Sarah. She began viewing her work not as a race against time, but as a journey of incremental steps. Every child who learned to read, every family that escaped hunger, every woman who pursued her dreams, these were victories worth celebrating, and together, they added up to something extraordinary. Back home, Sarah's influence extended beyond the foundation. Her story inspired others to take action, sparking grassroots movements across the globe. Teachers incorporated her work into lesson plans, encouraging students to think critically about social justice. Artists created murals and sculptures honoring her contributions, turning public spaces into galleries of hope. Even corporations pledged funds and expertise to support her initiatives, recognizing the value of investing in humanity. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to shine in the art world. His latest exhibition, titled Ripples, featured interactive installations that invited viewers to reflect on the impact of kindness. One piece allowed visitors to write messages of gratitude on paper boats, which were then floated in a shallow pool. By the end of the show, thousands of boats filled the water, creating a breathtaking mosaic of hope and connection. Proceeds from ticket sales went directly to the foundation, further fueling its mission. Friends and former co-workers marveled at how far Sarah had come. To them, she was living proof that anyone could make a difference regardless of background or circumstances. Her journey served as a reminder that greatness isn't defined by wealth or status. It's measured by the lives you touch and the legacy you leave behind. For Daniel, watching Sarah thrive reinforced his belief in the power of compassion. In a world often driven by greed and division, she stood as a beacon of unity and empathy. Their partnership evolved into something deeper, a bond rooted in shared values and mutual admiration. Though their communication relied on written notes and gestures, they understood each other perfectly, finishing thoughts before they were fully expressed. Together, they envisioned a future where education, healthcare, and opportunity were accessible to all. They dreamed of a world where kindness wasn't the exception but the norm, and though they knew achieving such a vision would require years, if not decades, of effort, they faced the challenge with optimism and determination. As Sarah prepared for her next adventure, a trip to Mongolia to establish mobile libraries for nomadic communities, She reflected on her journey thus far. From serving plates in a diner to spearheading life-changing programs, she had come farther than she ever imagined. Yet she knew her work was far from over. Challenges lay ahead, yes, but so did opportunities to continue making a difference. After all, sometimes the smallest gestures, a note on a napkin, a check slipped across a table, can lead to the greatest transformations. Sarah's journey reached a pivotal moment when she was invited to speak at an international humanitarian conference in Geneva. The event brought together leaders, activists, and innovators from around the world, all united by a shared goal to address pressing global challenges. For Sarah, it was both an honor and a daunting responsibility. She had always been comfortable working behind the scenes, quietly making a difference without seeking recognition. But now, standing on stage in front of thousands of people, she realized her voice carried weight, and that it could inspire others to join the cause. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Sarah stepped up to the podium. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching her notes, but her eyes scanned the crowd with determination. She began by recounting her humble beginnings, the long hours at the diner, the struggles to support her brother, and the chance encounter with Daniel that had changed everything. Her story resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in understanding or wiped away tears. "I didn't set out to change the world," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I just wanted to help one person at a time. And guess what? That's all it takes. One act of kindness can spark a chain reaction. One opportunity can transform a life. One dream can inspire a movement." Her words echoed through the hall, earning thunderous applause. As she concluded her speech, she issued a call to action. "None of us can do this alone," she emphasized. "But together, we can create a ripple effect that touches every corner of the globe. Let's build a future where no child goes to bed hungry, where every girl has access to education, and where everyone feels seen, valued, and loved." By the end of her presentation, Sarah wasn't just another speaker. She was a catalyst for change. Attendees lined up to speak with her, eager to learn more about her work and how they could contribute. Some offered financial support, while others pledged their skills and expertise. Even seasoned professionals admitted they left the session feeling reinvigorated, ready to tackle challenges with renewed purpose. In the months following the conference, Sarah's influence grew exponentially. Media outlets featured her story, highlighting her journey from waitress to humanitarian leader. Interviews aired on television, articles appeared in newspapers, and podcasts invited her to share insights about her work. Each platform amplified her message, reaching millions of people worldwide. Social media campaigns inspired by her speech went viral, encouraging individuals to perform random acts of kindness and tag their posts with "Duck Year, one act at a time." What started as a personal mission had blossomed into a global movement. Daniel watched, proudly as Sarah embraced her role as a public figure. Though he preferred staying out of the spotlight himself, he supported her every step of the way. He provided strategic advice during meetings, reviewed speeches, and ensured she had the resources needed to sustain her growing initiatives. Their partnership remained strong, built on mutual respect and shared values. To Daniel, Sarah represented everything he believed in: authenticity, humility, and unwavering dedication. For Sarah, the newfound attention came with its own set of challenges. Critics emerged, questioning whether someone without formal qualifications should lead such ambitious projects. Others accused her of using her story for personal gain. At first, the negativity shook her confidence, but she soon learned to rise above it. "If I let fear stop me, I'd never accomplish anything," she told Daniel one evening after reading harsh comments online. "What matters is staying true to who I am and why I'm doing this." Her resilience earned her even more admirers. People admired not only her achievements but also her ability to face adversity with grace and courage. Friends and colleagues rallied around her, reminding her that criticism often accompanies success. Ethan, too, played a crucial role in keeping her grounded. "You're amazing, sis," he said over dinner one night. Don't let anyone dim your light. As Sarah continued her work, she focused on expanding the foundation's impact. New programs launched in underserved regions, addressing issues like clean water access, maternal health, and digital literacy. In Afghanistan, for example, Sarah partnered with local organizations to establish mobile clinics that traveled to remote villages, providing medical care to women and children. Similarly, in Brazil, she introduced coding workshops for teenagers living in favelas, equipping them with skills to compete in the tech industry. Each project reinforced her belief in the power of collaboration. By working closely with communities, governments, and NGOs, Sarah ensured that solutions were sustainable and culturally relevant. She also prioritized training local leaders, empowering them to take ownership of initiatives long after the foundation's team departed. This approach not only fostered independence but also strengthened trust between stakeholders. Back home, Sarah remained connected to her roots. She frequently visited the diner, catching up with old friends and sharing stories of her adventures. To her, the diner symbolized resilience, a reminder that greatness often stems from humble beginnings. No matter how far she traveled or how high she climbed, she stayed true to the values that guided her forward. Ethan's artistic career continued to flourish, further amplifying Sarah's message. His latest project, titled Threads of Humanity, featured large-scale murals painted in cities across the globe. Each piece depicted moments of connection: children holding hands, farmers working together, volunteers rebuilding homes. Beneath each mural, Ethan included a QR code linking to the foundation's website, inviting viewers to get involved. The response was overwhelming, with countless people donating, volunteering, or simply spreading awareness. Friends and former co-workers marveled at how much Sarah had grown. To them, she was proof that kindness and perseverance could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Even strangers reached out, sharing stories of how her work had touched their lives. A teacher in India wrote to thank her for providing resources that kept his struggling school open. A mother in Peru sent photos of her daughter proudly wearing a uniform from the Foundation's program. These messages filled Sarah with gratitude, reinforcing her belief in the ripple effect of compassion. For Daniel, watching Sarah thrive reinforced his faith in humanity's potential. In a world often driven by greed and self-interest, she proved that kindness and humility could create lasting change. Their bond deepened, evolving into a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Though their backgrounds couldn't have been more different, they complemented each other perfectly, Daniel's strategic mind balancing Sarah's empathetic heart. One evening, as they sat together overlooking a bustling city skyline, Daniel handed Sarah a small box. Inside was a simple yet elegant necklace engraved with the words, "One act at a time." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for this, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Daniel smiled, his expression warm and proud. "You've already changed the world, Sarah," he typed on his phone. "And you'll keep changing it, for the better." Years later, Sarah stood on another stage, this time receiving an award for humanitarian excellence. As she accepted the trophy, she glanced across the room, her eyes meeting Daniel's. They exchanged a knowing smile, silently acknowledging the journey that had brought them here. Neither of them could have predicted how their paths would intertwine, but both were grateful for the transformation it sparked, not just in their lives, but in the lives of countless others. Sarah's story became a testament to the power of kindness and humility. It reminded people that you don't need riches to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is a caring heart. And for Daniel, meeting Sarah reaffirmed his belief that true connections are priceless, a lesson he carried with him for the rest of his life. As the crowd applauded, Sarah whispered softly, almost to herself, "Sometimes, the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest transformations." And with that, she stepped off the stage, ready to continue making the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time.